Okay, welcome back to another episode of Beyond Sport Podcast, this podcast that talks about sport, careers, mental health, and everything in between. You have your usual hosts with myself, Craig, fellow tutors Nathan and Mark, guest student host today, Dylan, and I'm delighted to welcome along Darren England, Premiership referee. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you very much.
No problem at all. So some of you might know Darren, some of you might not, maybe for good reasons, maybe for bad reasons. We'll discuss that as we go further on. But Darren's refereed all the way through the football pyramid, also been assistant referee for major tournaments, as well as working his way now into the Premier League and is the main man in the middle. And I'm sure we'll talk about all the pressures that go with that as well. So Darren, I kind of want to take you back all the way to when you first kind of stepped on this kind of career into refereing and officiating. Can you remember your first ever game that you got involved in?
Yeah, I mean, it all started out in terms of I was playing football at the time myself, and my friend's dad basically said, "Look, my son's going on a referee course. Would you like to go on it?" At that time, I'd just come out of the academy. I used to play for Barnsley at the academy until I was 15, and I just got kind of released from that. And I thought, you know what, why not give it a go? Obviously, it's good to get qualifications, things like that on your CV. So went to Barnsley College, did the course over a number of nights and weekends, as it was back then. And then, started kind of taking up the whistle with kids games, but also adult football. So my first adult football match was at Royston in Barnsley on a cold Sunday morning. I think after about 20 minutes, I had to send someone off for a headbutt. And it's amazing how you do the course and you think you know the laws as good as you can, and then trying then to apply that into an actual game and actually show a red card is actually harder than what you think. So luckily I had a mentor there on the day and kind of panicked a little bit, but got there in the end. And first game, red card. For a headbutt.
What an introduction to refereeing.
Yeah.
It doesn't come harder than that. But I suppose that experience then kind of set you on your way then, didn't it?
It does, yeah. I mean, and unfortunately, some people have that kind of experience. It might be a negative one kind of at first game or first kind of few games. And if the support mechanisms network's not there, then actually that's why probably quite a few people drop off, really. And I just urge everybody who does referee and tries it just to stick to it, because obviously the benefits are there to be seen. So, it were a bit of an eye opener, but I suppose it straight in at the deep end, and luckily I managed to cope with it. So,
brilliant.
Interesting that you've gone from refereeing on cold, freezing Sunday mornings to refereeing in front of tens of thousands of people at an elite level stadium. At what point did it sort of spark for you that this is sort of a career direction I want to go down? And were there any like role models or anything in the refereeing world that you looked up to along the way?
Yeah, I mean, refereeing is a real weird one, because I don't think nobody is ever born wanting to be a referee. Like, you obviously want to be a professional footballer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a policeman. There's not many people say, I want to be a referee when I get older. So you almost go into the career by chance sometimes, by parents and referee not turning up, and you're just taking it up the whistle and then doing the course, and lots of different avenues how people go into it. So obviously no real role models when I was kind of not doing it, but then actually when I got into it and started obviously refereeing myself, enjoying it, role models, obviously local guys like Howard Webb, people like that, and people at the top of their game, was fantastic to see them as well, because they're local as well and they're doing really well, just to look up to. In terms of games and refereeing between cold Sunday mornings at Royston versus being at wherever Premier League stadium you're at, there's obviously big differences, of course there is, but at the end of the day it's a game of football, and you just try and apply yourself as much as you can, whichever game you're in, because a penalty is a penalty or a red card's a red card at times. Yes, there's obviously some differences, but it's very much the same game played at any level. So you just try and apply yourself to the game and apply the skills you've kind of worked on for many years, really. So obviously you've got more crowd noise at the Premier League level, at professional game, but actually sometimes the hardest games where I can remember back are the ones where you've got one man and his dog, because actually when he speaks, everybody can hear him. And it's probably a little bit similar now in terms of what we're doing now, obviously behind closed doors, where you might get one or two representatives from the teams. Obviously, there's no fans in, but shouting, and you can hear that. So actually, that's actually harder, because normally it's just a noise, just a background noise. You don't really hear it. You're just focused on the game. The biggest step up in terms of when I realised, actually, you know what, this is kind of a professional environment, and there's obviously a career potentially to be had from this, was probably kind of, we work in levels with refereeing. You start at level 7, work your way down to kind of level 1, and it was kind of level 4 to level 4 to level 3, which basically is kind of going from refereeing kind of local Saturday league football to then starting to referee semi-professional, like your Parkgate, your Maltby Mains, Armthorpe Welfare, those kind of teams. Because actually, it's semi-professional football. Then people pay to go and watch those games. So that was probably the step up where I thought, actually, yeah, this is not just a running around the field blowing a whistle. Actually, this is, people expect more from you in terms of everything what goes with it. So,
that's fantastic.
Daz, how was the step up from, you know, being the assistant with a flag to actually being in the middle, you know, with the whistle? And in terms of what sacrifices did you have to make between, you know, doing the two jobs?
Yeah, it was a big decision for me, because it was almost like deal or no deal, really. I had this kind of, in one hand, I had obviously assisting on the Premier League, some of the biggest games. Fortunate to be working in a team with Michael Oliver, who obviously one of my colleagues now, and in my opinion, one of the best referees in the world. And I was kind of in his team, and it was it paid me to say that, by the way. But yeah, in terms of, but no, I mean, really good guy, good referee, and I was kind of going with him abroad, domestically as well. So I knew that we'd have a good chance of going to major tournaments and big games in Europe and big games in the domestic kind of calendar as well. So that was a tough choice, because I had that, and I had a good chance of kind of keeping that and progressing on with the assisting. But in this other box over here, I had this kind of real opportunity of actually being the man in the middle of myself. And when you start out as a referee, you start out as a referee. You don't start out as an assistant. You have to do the assistant referee role as part of your kind of refereeing as you go through the levels. Only when it becomes kind of serious in terms of actually just becoming an assistant referee now, it's kind of 3-4 levels down the line in terms of from when you do your course. So I had that kind of decision to make, and I was refereeing on the conference at the time. So I was a level 2A referee, as they're known now. And I was landing on the Premier League. So I got offered promotion onto the national list. So the national list now cover basically League 1 and League 2 of the professional game. And once you get onto that level as a referee, you can't run the line no more. So you've got to give up. You've got to give up being a dual kind of official. You've got to either be assistant or you need to be a referee. So big sacrifices for me, both financially as well, and for my family and things. I got to spend more time with my family by choosing refereeing, because I weren't going abroad as much. Well, I weren't going abroad in terms of officiating. So I had more time at home, which was obviously a big benefit. But I had to back myself and think, you know what, have I got the potential to go all the way as a referee where I've been as an assistant? I believed in myself, and yeah, there's obviously been bumps along the way, and there'll continue to be bumps along the way. But yeah, just for me, back myself, and I think it was kind of 27, 28, I made the decision. And yeah, interesting start, but we got there kind of in the end. So
I remember Ben telling me a bit about your story. It might have been about a year and a bit ago, when he said you got sort of put in the position between assisting at Barcelona or taking the ball out at Bury. And it was sort of like, wow, like when you put it into contrast the size, but then also not, you take the size away from it, and you look at the actual role, it's quite an achievement regarding any level.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, in terms of that, it absolutely was that. And I think one of the games, I'm sure we'll come on to games what have been quite memorable, but one of the games, my second one into my Football League career, was at Accrington Mansfield Town, and real tough game. And I didn't perform very well. I lost control, and I think I had about 10 yellow cards. It was carnage. So the players were refereeing the game rather than me. So, and I think that same kind of week, I think Michael was somewhere in a Champions League match or somewhere, and I probably more than likely would have been with him if I'd have stayed on the line. And that was quite a wake-up call, really, to say, look, I've made my decision now. Got to roll my sleeves up and really work hard and work even harder to progress through the levels. But there's no comparing in terms of refereeing to assisting. When you're refereeing, you're the leader of the team, and you've got the responsibility. And yeah, you get recognised when things go well, but obviously when things don't go so well, you get recognised in that sense as well. And also, if your assistants make a mistake with an offside, if you listen in the media, they rarely say the assistant. It'll always be the referee gets an offside wrong or something. So you carry the can. But what comes with that is obviously more responsibility. And I wanted to be the leader of the team rather than kind of just part of the team, really. So.
And I think that kind of links into your question, doesn't it,
Dylan? How do you cope with all this pressure of making all these big decisions in the games?
Yeah, it's I mean, now obviously I'm used to it. It's just like any other job, really. Whatever you guys do with your work or your hobbies and stuff. Over time, you get more experience. You get more comfortable with dealing with pressure. I thrive on it in terms of I kind of enjoy the pressure of making kind of split-second decisions in a sporting arena of football. I think that's, for me, is a really good kind of opportunity, role, career. So I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the pressure of doing that. And I think for me, it's just being calm and just really being composed as much as you can be before the game, during the match, before incidents are happening, during, but also after incidents have happened as well. And we talk about, we work with psychologists. In fact, Liam Slack, I'm pretty sure some of you will know him. He's from Doncaster himself. He's a full-time sports psychologist who works with us, all the Premier League referees and match officials. And we talked with Liam about kind of parking decisions and moving on and how to use kind of certain methods of doing that during games. Because if you make a big mistake, okay, people will generally kind of accept we make mistakes. But then if you make another one, a very similar one, or in the same game, that's when people think, well, just a minute, what's happened with this referee kind of thing. So different methods, really, in terms of different mechanisms we use in terms of parking decisions, and just preparing yourself for. I don't ever go into a game. I go into a game trying to make every decision right and be correct, but I also have an appreciation that not every decision will be correct. On average, we make around 400 decisions in a game. That's everything, throw-ins, corner. To get everyone right is a tall order. That's not to say we go into games thinking, oh, we'll make a few mistakes today. It doesn't really matter. Well, of course it matters. But what you want to do is make a mistake on a throw-in, what nobody cares about, rather than a penalty or a red card. So it's having that appreciation before you go into it, rather than thinking, oh, I ain't going to make any mistakes today. I'm going to be perfect. That's the wrong method, wrong attitude for me, because you're going to fail.
Yeah, excellent, Darren. And you've obviously been involved in officiating for quite some time, and you'll have seen lots of changes throughout the years and stuff. What would you say the biggest kind of rule change that you feel like has impacted the game, probably most from your opinion? So we've had such as like the pass back rule and stuff like that. What would you say has kind of made the biggest kind of impact so far?
I mean, obviously the new system with VAR obviously has changed the game massively, which again I'm sure we'll talk about. But in terms of rules themselves, there's obviously been some big changes kind of over the last few years, big kind of amendments to the law. And I think I know they trialed the one where if a player had showed dissent, you could move the wall 10 yards, 10 meters forward. I thought that was quite a good one. I know that's not in play now. So I thought that was quite a good option, really, similar to what rugby have as such. But so that was quite good. In terms of impacting the game as such and maybe speeding it up, the goal kicks now where defenders can stay in the area and they can play kind of, and attackers have got to be outside, defenders can stay in and play it to the keeper. I think that's speeded the game up, I think, and I think it's made it better, to be honest, because it was sometimes so well, disrespectful being shown by players because they were like walking out the area slowly and then they'd step back in. If they were put under pressure, we'd have to restart the game. It was really frustrating for everybody, to be fair. So I think that speeded the game up. Drop balls now as well is a good thing for us because you'll never have a contested drop ball. You remember obviously when you had two players and as a ref, it's the worst. It's the worst nightmare. I stood there with the ball thinking one of these are going to kick me in the nether regions at some point, or I'm going to get the ball in the face or something. So that's better in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, there's been lots of kind of changes to the laws over the last few years. I've not really seen kind of one major difference as such, but I certainly think the goal kick one and being able to actually play within your own penalty area has certainly speeded up the game. So,
good.
Listening to your talk before, Darren, you talk about there being virtually 3 penalty boxes. Can you sort of expand on that ideology and what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I always say to my team about obviously every area on the pitch is important to get decisions right. The most important is obviously the 2 penalty areas, but we almost have this third one in front of the benches, in front of the dugouts, because we know that if we get things wrong there, the temperature of the game goes up naturally because managers obviously see it, disagree with it, substitutes, and the feeling from the managers and frustration then kind of goes onto the field of play, really, to the players. So it's important to get, and I'm pretty sure there's some statistics somewhere, but I'm pretty confident most bad tackles tend to happen in front of the dugout for some reason. I'm pretty sure it's because the players want to show the managers that they're really up for the game or whatever. But when I look back at tackles and things, they're generally always kind of in front of the technical area. So that's what we talk about, the third penalty area, just kind of making sure we get decisions right across the field. But in those 3 areas, those are the ones that have the most impact. Obviously, penalty areas have the most impact on score lines and things like that. But in front of the technical areas, it has the most impact on our control, really. So,
fantastic.
As you've talked about the team, obviously yourself, the 2 assistants, the 4th official, and you spoke about you were close with Michael Oliver when you were the assistant, and I know like Darren Cann and Hardware were quite close in terms of doing a lot of games. Your communication must be excellent, and they must be one of the key sort of transferable skills that you have as a referee and within sport. What would you say, apart from communication, what other sort of transferable skills would you have?
I think you've got to, as a referee, you've certainly got to be a leader and show leadership qualities around managing situations. I think you have to manage, you obviously have to manage people very well. You have to inspire, you have to motivate your team as assistants, as 4th official. You want to make them want to go out for 90 minutes and do everything they can for you as a referee. So you've got to motivate them. But you've also got to manage the players as well. And like all of us, we're all different. So, and players are exactly the same. They're all different. Some players you can engage with and you can really engage with and use them to manage other players. Some players don't want to talk to you, and that's fine. So you have to pick and choose the moments when you do have to speak to that certain player. So, and that comes with experience of knowing the players and being in certain situations. So I certainly think kind of many leadership skills, managing conflict, managing people, and also being approachable as well. For me, there's a fine line between being confident and being arrogant in terms of when people approach you. You have to make sure that people know the line, where it is, what the boundaries are, because at the end of the day, you're the referee, you're in control of that game. But at the same time, you don't want to come across as being arrogant, because then people don't engage with you as well as you would be if you were really open and kind of willing to engage. So there's lots of skill, and that's one of the benefits for me of getting into refereeing for young people, to be honest, because there's so many. Yes, I mean, not so much now, because we're not allowed to do grassroots football. Hopefully that'll be happening soon. So obviously it's happening soon, so that's a good thing. But financially, that's a really good thing for young people to do, refereeing wise. Really good in terms of getting a bit of cash. But the skills you develop and the situations you're in, sometimes the situations are not nice when you having to show a player a red card for a headbutt or whatever, or you've got a parent shouting at you. But you know what? You come through those situations much better person in terms of having experience of dealing with situations like that. So there's lots of transferable skills in terms of refereeing and what you can transfer to your wider life. So.
No, that's fair. And I know, sort of listen to ex-pros and pundits, they always say that as long as the referee kind of explained why they give the decision, there's no real arguments about it. And that's all they wanted, just that communication between the refs and the players and vice versa.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, obviously you guys don't hear what goes on the field in terms of, obviously it's not like rugby where you can hear the referee speaking, but there's a hell of a lot of communication goes on between players and referees. There's a real hell of a lot of communication goes on between referees and their assistants. Over the headsets, when you a lot of, I would say now, in terms of how we referee games of football, yes, we've obviously got to give decisions and move around, but communication is probably over 50-60% of what we do in terms of switching each other on to certain things, what could be happening before they happen, confirming decisions. There's a lot of communication what goes on. So, and there's a lot of communication what goes on between, like I say, officials and players as well. So not always positive, but it all adds to the fun.
Absolutely, and it kind of leads into Dylan's question about sort of how you cope with it.
Yeah, well, with referees under the microscope and tend to be judged by most decisions, how do you cope with the praise and criticism you receive?
Don't go looking for it. That's the first thing. So, because you'll generally get negative criticism. So don't type your name into Twitter, things like that, because you probably get some negative kind of messages and some very not nice messages as well, which obviously I know we've had recently as well with some of our colleagues, which is obviously not good at all, and hopefully that'll be dealt with. But I think I don't hide away from it, to be honest, but I try and switch off really away from football. I don't kind of come home and just sit watching games of football and watching people reviewing games and giving their thoughts on decisions or whatever as such. I kind of listen to the people who are in my kind of trusted circle, really, in terms of coaches, friends, colleagues, speak to them. But I don't tend to watch every game and watch the full analysis after games and things like that, because you can be bogged down in it all, to be honest, and it can start and confuse you really. So yeah, when the praise comes, obviously accept it. It's obviously really nice to be, anybody likes praise for whatever they do, and particularly as a referee, because we don't get it often. So when it does come, brilliant, but just take it with a pinch of salt at the same time, because you know next week it could be totally different. So
excellent. And obviously you mentioned before, Darren, about the current situation with managing in these big stadiums and not many people being there. It must be really different on a match day, especially for an officiating team, in terms of what you have to do and the process of that you have to go through. Talk us through that kind of like match day routine.
Yeah, obviously the minute it's totally different. I mean, it's almost normal now because we've been doing this for the last kind of season or so. We get tested we get tested twice a week now. So more or less every 5 days we're getting tested. So we do the test at home, drop it off at the stadium. We then get the results back on the app we use kind of the day after generally. To get into a stadium, so each stadium has 3 zones. They have a red, amber, green zone. To get into the red zone, which is basically the pitch and the changing rooms, you need to have had a negative test within 5 days of that game. You need to have your temperature checked. You need to do a questionnaire at the ground. So once you're through that, then preparation-wise, it's very similar to what we did before, to be honest. That we have a meeting with the captains briefly, all at a social distance, all that stuff, which obviously is slightly different to what we were doing before, but making sure you're far apart. You have a bit of a chat with the captains before the game, just some key messages. Obviously now it's around key messages around COVID, around don't be swapping shirts, just think about social distancing as much as you can, all that stuff. And then we prepare for the game, really. Put a bit of music on in the changing rooms and obviously go for a warm-up, do the game as such. In terms of no fans, it was strange, obviously, at first, because we're used to having fans. You had to really work around concentration, because to concentrate for 90 minutes is quite hard when you're running around and there's lots of things going on. and even more so when there's no fans there as well, because sometimes there's just like no noise whatsoever. So that was quite hard. You had to really believe in what you were seeing in terms of when you were giving decisions. So if a player may have gone down a little too easy, maybe, and starts making some screaming noises, then you've got to really think: has it been a foul, or is he trying to win a foul, that was almost magnified more because obviously there's no fans, there's no background noise. Whereas with fans, you generally kind of didn't really hear that noise as such, unless you're kind of in front next to them. So yeah, but in terms of match day kind of procedures, not much different, obviously, apart from the testing, what we do. So like I say, we test every 5 days. So it's probably the safest environment to be in, to be honest, in terms of a football stadium, because the protocols they've got in place are fantastic, and everything they do about it. So yeah.
We often talk with our students, Darren, about like this, about ambition and sort of like stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes, so for example, it takes 2 years to get your college qualification, another 3 years to get your degree. From someone who, going way back, started on them cold Sunday mornings to now at sort of like a pinnacle within the Premier League and refereeing, sort of what's next for you? What's your ambition to progress onto?
Yeah, I mean, my next step now is so when I was on the line, I was a FIFA assistant referee, which basically each country has 10 places basically for referees and 10 places for assistant referees, and that allows you then to go abroad and do Champions League games and tournaments or whatever. So that's my next aim as a Premier League referee this season, is to get a FIFA place for next season, basically, to then allow me to go abroad and do what I did on the line, but obviously in the middle, really. So that's kind of my remit. And short-term goals, very much around consistency and making sure I just bed in, really. And obviously first season on and just delivering games when they come and yeah, staying under the radar as much as I can, really. But we know the goal of the Premier League is impossible sometimes to kind of stay under the radar. And someone said the other day about the old saying of, the best referees are ones you don't notice. It's impossible not to be noticed now. Those days have gone. That's not saying we want to be in the spotlight. We want to be the game's not about us. The game's about the players. And if they're not talking about the referee after, then great. But the exposure, the big spotlight we're under now, particularly within Premier League football and the professional game, decisions need to be made. And what comes with that is then people looking and analysing decisions or whatever. So gone are the days of, the best refs are ones that you don't see. Well, it's impossible now.
Do you do some referee mentoring yourself? Like, do you help out those who are lower down the pyramid?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, my previous job, obviously working with Ben and stuff, working with the community trusts anyway, working with the sports charities and stuff. So I still do some stuff with that when I can, things like this. But yeah, coaching and mentoring as well, referees. And I think going forward, that'd be something I'd like to do even more, really. It's just getting the time to do it and stuff at the minute, because it's actually really, really busy. We're probably doing kind of 2-3 games a week at the minute. Not refereeing all the time, but so like this week I'm refereeing kind of tomorrow, I'm VAR on Saturday. Sorry, I'm fourth fish on Saturday, then I'm VAR on Sunday. With that, you got all the travelling as well. So it's not just a case of you turn up at 3:15, you get your kit on and you're back at home for 6. You're travelling into games, maybe night before sometimes, travelling back afterwards. We've got a train. We have meetings. Obviously, we normally be meeting up face-to-face. Obviously, we can't now, so a lot of this is done on Zoom. So there's watching games back, analysing your own performances and stuff at times. So there's a lot of things to do, really, to try and cram stuff in. But yeah, when I can, I love kind of mentoring and coaching anyway. That's my background. I coached for Barnes, a football club, for many years. That's how I kind of got into football, really, in terms of the refereeing side and the coaching side after I stopped playing. So yeah, something I'd be keen to do more.
Yeah, fantastic.
As you touched on it a little bit, the travelling that you do, you could be you could be reffing at Newcastle, and then you could be doing fourth official at the Amex. So you're always traveling. And I remember I spoke to you last year, and I think you just been at St Mary's, and you travelled all the way back home. How do you remain sort of focused on, on the way down, and then on the way back? How are you not sort of too hard on yourself, or, like you say, get too high?
I have a good playlist. Some would say I haven't, but I have a good playlist of music, really. Yeah, pretty relaxed, to be honest. Going down, obviously, on the game. Sometimes we're on the day, sometimes we're the night before, like I said, depending where you are. It's pretty relaxed, to be honest, going down and stuff. Yeah, stick the radio on, some music and stuff. And then on the way back, to be honest, your adrenaline's just rushing around your body for at least an hour or so after the game. So you're still kind of like buzzing, really, in terms of you're thinking about certain incidents and stuff like that. But I tend not to be honest, until I kind of get home and I'm more relaxed. And then the day after, I'll have a look at where we are in terms of decisions and incidents and stuff, really. Because for me, you can't change anything after the game. So, like, not that I just totally close off and don't worry about anything. If there's big decisions I need to look at again, yeah, I'll probably get home and I'll put them on and have a quick look. I'll not look too much into them. I'll have a look and get my gut reaction. Like, we all know when we've made a wrong decision. We all know when we've made a right decision. So I'll maybe have a look at one again, and I'll know straight away if I've made a decision what's probably not right. And then I'll leave it to that, really, until probably a day after, maybe a couple of days after. Then I will look at kind of why I've made that decision, positioning, anticipation, reading the game, all that stuff, what goes into it, and learn from that, really. But yeah, kind of before and after the game, it's just pretty much, pretty relaxed.
Would you say you kind of avoid 5 Live and Talk Sport on the way back, or would you just stick the music on?
A mixture sometimes. I put it on sometimes, and it's good for a laugh and to hear some of the comments, but not really. I kind of just listen to the music and do whatever. So
yeah, you do right. And again, it's going to. We'll touch on a little bit about the mental side of it, but Dylan was saying about the lockdown that we have.
During lockdown, you've been keeping physically fit, obviously due to refereeing, but how have you been keeping yourself like mentally active and stuff?
Well, I've got a 3 and 6 year old, so that certainly keeps me active physically and mentally. But I think just being busy, really. I like kind of being busy and doing stuff rather than just sat on my backside doing nothing, really. So just doing things with the kids and stuff. It's actually, I've been homeschooling, so it's actually been quite good from a mental side. Some would say not quite good from a mental side, but in terms of like keeping busy and stuff, just doing stuff, doing things, activities with them and training myself. So obviously not only we do the games, we have fitness plans, fitness programs each week. We've got to kind of do. So like I'm refereeing tomorrow. Today I've done a speed session, which we normally do the day before a game. So there's a lot of training to do as well. So obviously when you're out being physically fit, obviously your mental well-being is in a good way, a good situation. So yeah, I mean that's been quite good. But just trying to mix things up a little bit. Obviously, there's only so many walks you can go on at the minute, but you just get out there and just keep busy, really. So but it's hard. It is hard, and it's hard for everybody, to be honest. But and there's times where, obviously, yeah, of course, it's been really tough. But you just think you just got to get through it. It's the way it is, and hopefully we'll get there in the end.
Excellent. And just one thing that you kind of mentioned earlier, Darren, about talking about conflict and dealing with that. You get it from players, managers, coaches, all that sort of stuff. What's your best kind of advice with dealing with kind of conflicts, whether that be on the football pitch or in a career in general, sort of thing? What's the kind of ways that you would deal with kind of conflict?
I think remaining calm certainly is the one, because it tends to bring people down then to your level in terms of how if you then start being aggressive towards them or kind of losing your head, it doesn't work with anybody, to be honest. It doesn't work, it doesn't calm them down as such. So I think just remaining calm, I think being clear with what you're saying as well, and keeping communication simple and concise with what you're saying. Because if they can't understand what you're saying, or they kind of don't get it, some people don't want to get what you're saying. But if they don't understand what you're saying as such, they get frustrated even more. So just keep it simple, and just remain. The biggest one for me will be remaining calm throughout, because as soon as you start kind of losing your head, then. But again, it comes down to the situation you're in. It comes down to the people. Some people, will respond to I'm not arguing now, we're moving on kind of thing. A very blunt kind of done, that's it, we're off, we're on to the next decision. Whereas some don't want to engage at all, like I said before. But then there's some players who want to have a bit of a conversation, but then there's a fine line between, I ain't explaining my decision every single time. Yeah. I'm going to be here for a long time. So it's having that balance of, look, let's speak about the right ones, the ones what really matter. And let's leave the ones where they're a bit trivial to someone else to look at, kind of thing.
Yeah.
In terms of your whole career then, Darren, going from being a coach, working in the community to where you're at now, what's the best piece of advice you've been given personally?
Good question. I think just grasp every opportunity. And I know that's like, people say, well, everybody says that, but go looking for opportunities as well, really, and kind of push yourself. I like to push myself in terms of taking myself out of my comfort zone and doing stuff. And sometimes I fall flat on my face. But at least I've done it, kind of thing, and I've tried it, and it might be something I don't want to do ever again, but at least I've done it, rather than, oh, what would it be like if I did that, or how would I perform at doing that kind of career or hobby or whatever it may be. So yeah, for me, I just love being busy when I was a kid. So kind of when I went to college and on to university, I was still coaching at the academy at Barnsley. I was still refereeing. I was still working for the community side of things as well. And the only reason why I gave coaching up, to be honest, was because it was just getting too much. Like, my life was football, which people go, that's amazing, that sounds amazing, but 7 days a week and stuff, it's like any other job. It becomes a little bit a bit tedious at times, or a little bit stressful. So I had to give one of the roles up, to be honest, but I didn't want it. I kind of loved kind of working in the community side of things through the week. Saturday come, I'd referee. Sunday would be on an academy game, and it was brilliant. But obviously we get older and families and all that stuff comes into it. So, but take every opportunity and go looking for stuff and push people for stuff. And if you want to do something, keep on to people in terms of those people who can help you and stuff, get those opportunities, keep on at them and show that you're willing to do stuff, really. Don't let it come don't wait for stuff, to be honest, because it generally doesn't come.
That's great.
That's great advice. And we have talked about the pressures that referees are under and the scrutiny. And I know, like, they do Ref Watch on Sky Sports News, and you're always kind of in the spotlight. Do you guys as referees, would you talk openly about the importance of looking after your mental health? Would you stay in touch with other referees? And I know Sir Dermot Gallagher does a lot. What the sort of question is, would you talk about mental health, and is it something that you just chat about often with other referees?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something. I think sometimes mental health is a topic where we probably don't sit in a room and put on a board and go, right, today we're going to speak about mental health, and we just have a debate about it. I think it just comes naturally, to be honest. I think what we do, when we talk about coping under pressure, when we're talking about when there's been a certain weekend where decisions have been not so good or be perceived, or we're getting a battering in the media and stuff like that, and stuff, and it's about just getting together really as a team. And obviously that's hard now because we can't at the minute. But yeah, we work with psychologists a lot. We work with, like I said, Liam and people like that. There's a couple of sports psychologists we work with, how we can speak with, how we can use mechanisms to cope with certain mental health issues and stuff. And I think it's becoming more open now, isn't it? In every walk of life, isn't it? Mental health. It's it's out there, and so it should be. So yeah, we probably don't sit and have an hour at a time and say, right, today we're going to speak about mental health only. But I think we touch on aspects of it in our conversations all the time, to be honest. And not only as colleagues, obviously, as friends and family as well. They're crucial, because at the end of the day, those people know us the best. So they know when we are a bit down or we are a bit stressed, and they can do things to help us as well. So yeah, it's certainly something we talk about, and I'm sure over time we'll be talking about it more and more and more, and I'm pretty sure we do a lot of it when we don't even know we're talking about it, to be honest.
That's kind of really positive, Darren, from your aspect, and referees across the country and stuff. This is kind of, we're coming to the end of this kind of podcast, and this is a question that we ask all of our guests, and it's one that stumps some people. Some people think, yeah, I know that straight away. But if you were to go back kind of to a 16-year-old Darren and wanted to give that Darren advice on life in general, what kind of things would you say to yourself, knowing what you know now, sort of thing?
Probably last year that I was 16, so I'm trying to think. I think at the end of the day, I know you're told when you're sort of 16 and qualifications, get your CV and get your experience, but it actually is really true. And because at the end of the day, make no mistake about it, it's a competitive world we live in, and if you're not wanting to be the best what you can be, then you're going to fall short, and that's just the way it is. And I think you've got to really kind of work, and some people's best will be totally different to other people's best, absolutely. But if you can just push yourself to your limits, then that's all you can do, for me. And make no mistake about it, when you do leave college and start working and looking for work, or after university or whatever, for me, you left it too late. I think you need to be looking now at 50. I was working at 15, 16. I was doing Saturday morning coaching at Barnsley and stuff as a 15-year-old. So for me, the earlier you start with opportunities, like I was saying before, about grasping those opportunities and volunteering or doing whatever you need to do, when you get to a stage where you are kind of competing for jobs, you've got a feather in your cap already. You've got your qualification, but you've also got that experience as well. And for me, it's just about making the best use of everything, really, as much as you can. And yeah, things you'll do, you'll find you're not so good at, or you'll find you need to work really hard at it to be good at it. But don't just sit back and go, well, I don't really like that, or I don't think I'll be good at it, so I'm not bothered doing it. Go and do it. And if you're not good at it, then at least you know, then you can move on to something else. So that's kind of the advice I would give, really, in terms of that. Don't just sit there thinking, it'll be all right, I'll get a job at some point and whatever. And particularly now, unfortunately, with the world we live in, it's even more competitive with people losing their jobs and stuff. So get out there now and do stuff, even if it's just a couple of hours on a Saturday morning, volunteering. Do it now, because you'll be in a much better, stronger position when you come to look for jobs. Absolutely, and that's kind of the message that we try to get across to our students on a regular basis, and I'm sure Dylan would agree with that as well. Look, Darren, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you. We wish you all the very best for the rest of the season, and obviously your goals moving forward, and hopefully we'll see you kind of in the man in the middle in future kind of European tournaments and stuff like that as well. So thank you very much for chatting with us. Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.